All right, I'm going to start up. The plan today is to do this. First, we're going to write 3 different programs as a class. The first one will be very elementary, and actually the first 2 will be very elementary, and the third one will have a little bit more to it. All right, I am taping this, and if you have issues, problems, something doesn't work, just let me know. Okay, that's totally fine. It's actually in some ways at least to be expected. I forgot to do this morning, but I did hear from my counterpart at um, Muroc, and she sent me a PDF for chapter 1. So I will send that out to everybody today. You four, are any of you not have the book? Do you need chapters 1, 2, and 3, the PDF? Anybody? No? Okay. You what? You haven't received it? All right, I'll make sure then you two get sent chapters 1, 2, and 3 because I've got the PDFs. After we go through those first 3 programs and we talk about this, and I decided I'm just going to write them with you. All right, and it's totally fine. So I might make mistakes as well. And when we get done, we're going to go back over, transition back over into the book, and then we will go over chapters 2 and 3. Now, if we get all that stuff done, we did chapter 1 yesterday, and with the 2 machines, I brought the old machine home yesterday, forgetting that the tape that I'd made of chapter 1 was on the new machine. So that's already out there and it's on the YouTube playlist. So if you missed anything from yesterday, want to rewatch that or whatever, that's totally up to you. All right. So what I'd like everybody to do, what you should notice if you look up on my screen here, if I click my Windows button and it shows me all of the different programs that I've got loaded on this machine, and if I work my way down here, what I should see is, and I know it's kind of hard for you to read, especially from back here, but the point is, there's Visual Studio 2019 and there's the installer. Now I can bring the installer back up if I decide I want to either take something that I've already installed and uninstall it, or install something I have not yet installed. Or I could just remove that. You can literally go out and reload the installer again if you need to do that. This shouldn't be an issue for us since mine's the new machine. I told the class yesterday afternoon, I'm used to looking at my machine. This machine right here has about 500 gig on it, which isn't a small machine. That's half a terabyte. But I was constantly filling it last semester. I mean, I was running out. I was down to 2 or 3 gig out of 500. This one now has got 900 gig in it. So it was so cool yesterday to see that it said that there were 887 gig left. I just was not used to anything like that. But every time I make these tapes, and I've got to remember to do it, not only does it save it on my auxiliary drive, it saves it right on the C drive. All right, and I've got to remember because these videos can get pretty big. All right, it's the MP4 file that it creates that gets pretty big. All right, the point is, what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to at least try to right mouse click on here where it says this, and then hopefully it'll come up and it'll say pin to taskbar, which should pin that down here. All right, and I think that'll work. I don't know why it wouldn't. So I'm going to right mouse click, and it says pin to start. Well, I can pin it there, and there's a more, and then there's a pin to taskbar. You don't have to do this. But now, by pinning it to the taskbar, now it's down here. Now I can start that up. And if I did it too fast, I just want to do it one more time. I don't want to, take anything for granted. So again, I clicked my Windows Start. I went down. It's all in alphabetic order. I went down here, found Visual Studio 2019, not the installer, but Visual Studio 2019. I right mouse clicked on it. If I pinned the Start menu, it'll come up in here, which is fine if you want to do that. But I went to More and I pinned it to my taskbar. So now it's down here. However you want to do that, if you don't want to pin it, then just go out here like I just did, but I want you to start up Visual Studio. Everybody, please start up Visual Studio right now. Now, as we go through this stuff, at least on occasion, I'll go through something and I'll say to you, and this isn't in your book, because over time I've learned some tricks and etc. and ways that I think will make your program better. If you don't agree with those, you don't have to use them. That's totally fine. as an example, and it doesn't matter to you guys, but I just want to just show you what I'm talking about, okay? Now, yesterday, we were working on a program yesterday for the class in the afternoon, and when we started, we had to type in public static void main string args bracket like this, and then a curly brace, hit enter, and a curly brace. And I showed them that, and I said, now type that in. They did. Okay, now I said, now remove it. They were kind of like, why would you want to remove it? I said, because there's a shortcut in that editor that if you type in PSVM and you hit tab, it puts it in for you. You don't ever have to use that. But if I can type 4 characters like that and hit the tab key, as opposed to the 10, 20, 30, whatever, I'm going to use that. All right. The reason I'm telling you that is one of the things that we're going to look at in these first console programs that we write is I'm going to show you 3 different ways that you can write the same thing. And each one will be a little smaller than the previous one was. I recommend that after you do this, you have to add 1 line of code that is going to cut down what you have to type when you want your read line and write line statements that you'll see in a minute. It'll cut them down by 10 or 12 characters. All right. So we're going to go through that stuff, like I said, right now. So with this up here, what do we want to do? Well, I have nothing in mind. I'm starting just where you are. I do not have a payroll program or anything. I've got exactly what you have. All right. So I'm going to go in here and I'm going to click Create New Project. And I'd like you to do the same, please. Hopefully, there are different themes that you can use in here. And I noticed James here has got the dark theme, which is totally fine. But yesterday I was using with the other editor I had, for my Java class, I was using the dark theme and they couldn't read it. There's only 2 people in that class and they were sitting here and here. So I'm using the light theme. All right, but you'd use whatever one you want. There are like about 4 you can choose from. This is the default. So I'm choosing create a new project. And then it comes up and your screen may look similar to mine. Your screen may look a little different than mine. And I mentioned this to you yesterday. You can either search right through here and you notice there's a lot of different selections. Or for example, I know that I want to create a console application. Now, for me, mine is up near the top anyway. Yours might be there as well. But I'm just going to type in here, console. And if you type that in, it should bring it somewhere near the top, if not at the very top. And you'll see when you look at this, and again, when I'm doing this, if you go, I did it, nothing happened, then raise your hand and let me know, please. But it says, what do I want? A C#? Do I want a C# Windows console? Do I want a Visual Basic console, etc.? I want the C# one. That's what this class is all about, okay? And you may notice when you look in here, there are literally different languages that you can use inside of here. There's C#, there's Visual Basic.net, there's F#, and I'm sure I'm missing something, all right, that there's even more than that. We're going to be using C# exclusively 100% of the time. All right, so I'm going to choose this one here that says this with C#, so I'm going to click on it so that it's highlighted like this, and I'm going to click Next. And now it asks me 2 things. What do you want to call this? This thing that's in blue right there, it says, what is the name of your project? Now, I want you to understand something, so please look up on the screen here. This is what we want to call the individual program that we're working on. This is where you want it housed, and this is what the solution is called. I'm going to recommend, and again, we'll go over this more starting next week, that you probably create about 3 different solutions. Not this second, but when you've got some time. One of these solutions I would call homework, and you put all your homework problems in that solution. So all the different projects will be created inside of that solution. Another one called labs, for all your labs, and another one called HOT for your hands-on tests. Because then you've got all your stuff together, and some of the assignments and or tests that we work on will build off of a previous one. So what better way to have it than, so wow, I think I did something like that before. You can bring that one up and look at it. All right, to me, that just makes sense to do that. So I'm going to ask that that's what you do. So what I'm going to do in here, like I said, we're going to make 3 payroll programs. All right. It's strongly suggested that when you name your projects and when you name your solutions, do not use any blank spaces. Do not use any special characters. I would even try to, as much as possible, even though I'm going to break that right now, try to restrict the usage of numbers. All right. So we're going to write right now for our project name. This one I'm going to call payroll, and typically you start it with a capital letter. So I'm going to call this Payroll01 because we're going to have in here Payroll01, Payroll02, and well, maybe we won't have Payroll03. We'll see how that works in just a bit. But I think we should be able to put all of them in there. Now, we're not done yet, because the next thing I want to do is I want to go down here and tell it where I want this to go. All right, I'm going to want to put this onto my desktop. Now, occasionally when you do this and you click desktop and you choose select folder, sometimes, so all I did was right there is I clicked the ellipsis and I chose desktop from over here, right there. And I clicked select folder. Sometimes when you do that, it'll come back and it'll give you like almost like an error dialog that says cannot select this moniker. I don't know why it does that. All right, and it's something typically, if you do it the way I'm showing you, that won't typically happen. All right, so I've got that. Now this is going to be a little different. I know yesterday I was showing the students in the afternoon class how to save stuff, and they both have a OneDrive. So if you've got a OneDrive, yours may be a little bit different than this. I'm not trying to confuse you, all right, by showing you my desktop because I don't have a OneDrive on this new machine. So yours may look a little bit different. That's all I'm telling you. All right, then it says, what do you want to call the solution? Now, by default, and my simple 3-word definition for default is unless told otherwise. So by default, it gives the solution name the same name as your project. We don't want that. We're just going to call this payroll, period. All right. And it says, do you want to place your solution and your project in the same directory? I believe we want to do that. So I'm going to click, yeah, I'm going to check right there. Okay. Now, can everybody see that? I mean, Christopher, can you even see that okay? And you understand what we're going through? Can you see that back there? Everybody back there, you can see that okay? Okay. All right. Now, we're not going to play with a framework, but if you look down here, we could click the down arrow and we could change the framework. It's set to the latest and greatest. You'll notice it goes from lowest to highest on here. If for some reason we had some features or functionality that we were using that was not workable in 4.7.2, we would go and we would basically go backwards in time, so to speak. Now you might say, I'll take your question a second. You might say, well, that doesn't make sense. Yes, it does. As an example, and these 4 gentlemen here know this, one of the things that you learn in the first semester here is a package called Bootstrap, okay? We used Bootstrap version 4.5 or something like that last semester. Now, version 5 is in beta, which means by the time you take the class, it'll probably be the working version. Now, sometimes when you use version 5, it breaks what's in version 4. That's one thing about Bootstrap that people don't like. They make major changes when they have different new versions. Version 4 broke everything in version 3. They even said when they came out with version 4, basically, if you've got stuff in version 3, you're going to have to do some rewrite. So occasionally that happens. That shouldn't happen in here. We should never have to change this. It should be fine always to use the defaults. Your question.
So I'm not seeing the menu when I click the place solution or part.
So you don't see any of this?
No.
All right, then let me walk over there and we'll see if we can find it.
Tell you what, click that. Let me just see exactly. It's like that is correct. Click on the Payroll01, that's good. That's your desktop, that's good. Uncheck that. See, uncheck. Now, is there any problems like logging into it? Now check. Did you pay for it? Okay, it probably did that one, two, double one. Okay, I think you did. All right.
I was just informed, because I made a mistake, so I want to show it to you. Do not check this. Uncheck that. Because when you check it, it puts it the same, gives them the same name. We don't want that. We want this one to just be called Payroll. All right, thank you. All right, so is everybody cool with this? This is what everybody has, am I right? All right, so then we just click Create. Now, what's going to happen is over time, what the heck that is? I don't want to restart it tonight. Okay. Close. All right. So first of all, you can make this bigger. If you've never done this before, if you hold down on your control key, and if you have a mouse, if you take your mouse and you use the wheel on the top, you can make this bigger or smaller. All right, you should be able to do that. There's also settings that are in the editor itself that you can use. All right, that's kind of big right there, so I'm going to make it a little bit smaller. And yours should look like mine looks right now. All right, again, your background might be different. Now, I don't want to confuse you, but I just want you to understand. You use this using system statement. I'm going to explain what it is in a minute, but you use that in virtually every program you do. Okay? These we're not going to use. And what's going to happen is right now, what you may or may not be able to notice is all of them are gray. When you actually start using them, they'll be blackened like this is. Okay? But right now, if I take my mouse and I put it over here, what I'm going to notice is I get this light bulb and it says, hey, you got a bunch of stuff you're not using. So if I choose right now, I can say remove unnecessary usings, they'll all be gone. It does not hurt to leave them there. If it bugs you, you can remove the ones that aren't being used. Either way, it does not affect the way the program runs at all. But some of this stuff that's in here, for example, link is something we don't talk about until the end of the semester. That stands for line integrated query. It's a way that you can work with database-like operations in here. The generic is what we'll use when we get into what's called array lists. All right, if you're doing some work with files, you might use system text. If you're doing more networking work, you might use the threading. But we're not going to be doing most of that stuff that's in there. All right. Now, I'm going to show you something. And don't type this. I just want everybody to look at this. All right. Since we have in here, I just to make it easier so I've got more room, I'm going to remove all of them except, or try to, remove all of them except the using system. Okay. I'm just removing all those. Again, you don't have to do that, but I just want more room on my screen to show. That's all. Now, since I've got using system here, all right, in fact, let's take this one. I'm going to comment it out. The easiest way to comment out a line in here is just to put in 2 forward slashes and you see it turns green. See that? Now, what I want to do is I just want to, on the screen, you don't have to do this because I'm going to remove it right away. But if I have the using system, if I have this here, if I have that uncommented, then I can write here console.writeLine hello. All right, I know that's kind of stupid, but just so, whoop, not like that. Just so you see it. You don't have to do this. If I run the program right now, if I run the program, it's going to show hello on a DOS type of screen, but it's going to go, boop, and it's going to flip. You're not even going to probably notice it. It's going to happen so fast. If I want it to stop so I can read it, then I say console.readLine. And then the machine will literally sit there and stop until I actually hit a key. And just to show you this, you don't have to do this, but I want you to watch. I'm going to click start. And you notice it's kind of hard to see there, but it says hello. All right, no big thing. But there's a reason that I'm showing you this. Now, if I hit a key, okay, and just hit enter, it goes away. Fine. Now, the reason I'm showing you this is that's because we had the using system, okay? And if I comment this out, notice what happens. I get errors because using system is a shortcut, so we don't have to say system.console.writeLine. All right, now if I come back in here and I type in system dot here and here, everything is fine. All right, that's all great. There's no problem with that whatsoever. All right, usually I keep the system even though we may not be using it right now, but I'm going to remove, in fact, I'm going to remove the system and the console. And you notice I get 2 errors because there's a shortcut, and I would recommend you put this up at the top. And that is this, that you type in the following. Using static system.console, like that. Then, if you put that in at the top, that's my line 2. Now I don't need to say console. I don't need to say system.console. It's a shortcut. Does that make sense to everyone? You don't have to use that. What the using statement does is C#, like any other programming language, has got a whole bunch of stuff that's made available for you to use. That stuff that's made available for you to use is kind of an unwritten contract between you and the software. And in fact, most of the time that is defined as being an API, which stands for an Application Program Interface. And what it says is the software says, hey, I'm going to let you use this shortcut, and it says, but the only thing is you got to use it in the right way. Now I could still type in here if I wanted to, either console.writeLine or system.console, but there's no reason to do it any longer. So you don't have to do this, but it's a shortcut that can make your life a little easier. Does that make sense to everyone? And you'll notice you don't have to type this in, but if I type in, for example, using space, and I type in system, and I hit a period, it shows me all the different stuff that I can add. All right? And there is some really cool stuff. I'll probably end up showing you at least 1 or 2 things more later on in the semester. For instance, there's a couple really, for lack of better words, cool tools that are not available in C#, but that are available in Visual Basic. So you can add a reference to Visual Basic here and use those Visual Basic tools right in your C# program. I think that's kind of nice. All right. So that's what we've added so far. You'll notice this is still gray. I'm probably not even using it, but I'm going to leave it in there anyway. So we're going to write right now, we are going to write a simple payroll program. The first one we write, the problem with it, so to speak, is we're going to hard code in everything, which means if you run the program 1,000 times, it's going to give you the same data every time. Then we're going to rip out that stuff and we're going to ask the user to input data. And then we'll print it out. Right now, just so you know, we're not going to do any validation of our input. So not right now, but when we do the second program, and one of the things it'll ask is how many hours did you work last week? Something like that. If you put hello, your program is going to blow up. Or if you leave it blank or anything non-numeric, it's going to blow up. It'll also take negative numbers, all right, which is wrong. We will add all that stuff later because it's in later chapters. I could show it to you now, but my goal here is not to confuse you, all right? To teach you, but not to confuse you with what you're learning. All right, so I'm going to come down here. I'm just going to move this up a little bit so you can see it. And I decided this morning, I was just thinking about it, I'm going to have about, I don't know, 7 pieces of information. So let me put in these 7 lines. I'm going to put in just Jane Doe for the name. You can put in your name. You can put in whatever you want. All right, but I'm going to put in 7 lines right now. You can put them in also. And after I get done, I'm going to explain what each line is doing. All right, so I'm going to put in 7 lines right here. I'm going to string first name equals Jane, string last name equals Doe. Oops. What was next? I think I had an employee number. Int emp number for the employee number. And I'm just going to set it to 0. What else was there? First name, last name. Boolean, or bool is what it is. And I called it is union. And I set it equal to, in fact, let's not give them an employee number of 0. Let's give them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's fine. I'm just making that up. It doesn't mean anything. This has to be true or false. We'll talk about what all this means in just a minute. We'll say that Jane is a member of a union. So we'll say true. And we'll have double hours worked. And we'll say that Jane is a very diligent employee who works 40 hours per week. And her hourly rate, she's been doing pretty well for herself. She makes $25 an hour. All right. And then finally, double, we'll say gross pay equals hours worked times hourly rate. All right. So please put in those 7 lines. And when you're done, just sit there for a couple minutes. Some people type faster than others do. I'll explain what the green squigglies are underneath there in just a second. I will tell you that it is expected that over your tenure here, if you're not a fast typist, that you will try to get better. All right, there is a program, it's called something like Type Racer. I mentioned it to these guys last semester, and it's free, and you're a racing car. And the faster you type and the more accurate you are, you're like racing against other cars. And the only reason I tell you about that is my student that I had about 2 or 3 years ago who was autistic, he found it, sent me an email and told me about it because he was not a good type. He was a 2-finger typist. And he got to be pretty good over the 2 years he was here. He could keep up with everybody else. That's all I'm asking. All right, I'm going to expect that either you're done or you're darn close to being done. So I want to explain every one of these lines. First of all, you'll notice that the first 4 lines are green and the second 3 are not green. The first 3 are green because they're not being used right now in the program. What I'm doing is I'm declaring and initializing. These are 7 different variables. And I'm declaring them and initializing them. I'm going to explain what that is in just a second. But I'm not using them. However, hours worked and hourly rate are being used. So they don't have the green squigglies. All right. In fact, if I take my mouse and put it over any one of those squigglies, it says local variable string first name. The variable first name is assigned, but its value is never used. If I showed the potential fixes, one would say, you're not using it, so you want me to remove it. No, but I could do that if I wanted to. All right. Now, right now, what I've done, this line, I'll grab the first one. It doesn't matter which of these first 6 we use. But this one right here is doing two things. This part right here, so imagine all we put in there was string first name and a semicolon on the end. That's called a variable declaration. We are declaring something we're going to use in the program. We're letting the system know that it's of type string. So if we give it a value, that value must be between double quotes. That's just the way it is. Now, if we wanted to, you don't have to add this, it's okay. But let's say we wanted to also add a middle initial. All right, again, you don't have to do this. If you want to, do it, and if you don't, it's totally fine. But I'm going to put in char, I'll call it middle init. And if I set that, then it's got to be a single quote. And let's say it's Jane Z Doe. All right, and if you look at that, don't know why I'm getting those errors, but let's see, represents. Yeah. Thank you. This keyboard is different than my other keyboard. I don't know if I told you guys this yesterday. I was telling the afternoon class where my end key was on this keyboard is now the key to turn it on and off. So if I hit the end key too hard, I'm going to turn my machine off, and I'm afraid I'm going to do that sometime. All right. And now, instead of having on my keyboard up on top an insert key and a delete key, they've combined them into one key. And it depends. If I'm in the middle of something, it automatically deletes that. So, I mean, I keep hitting the wrong keys all the time, but I appreciate that. Thank you. So you'll notice now I get that. But it's a character. So if I say something is a char, it has to be within single quotes. I can put any alphabetic character in there. I can put any numeric character in there. I can put any special character in there. And guess what? There's probably 100,000 other characters that I can put in there. All right? Because if I go into what's called the Unicode Character Set, I can put any Unicode character in there as well. And why would I want to do that? For example, there's a Unicode character when I learned division as a little kid, it was like this. We learned it like that. But there's no character like this on your keyboard. But there is a Unicode character for that. So if I wanted to, for some reason, put that in there, I could do that. Unicode characters look a little weird because it's a backslash followed by like U and a bunch of stuff, but it is still a single character. We don't even care about that right now, but I just wanted to mention it to you. Adding this, though, what this did was now I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different data types in here. Every one of these data types that you see in here is what's called a primitive or a simple data type. All right, and you guys probably heard me say this last semester, but just imagine that you guys come in here the first day, and you're sitting in here, and I'm late, and I walk in, and I give each one of you a Lego, literally a Lego, and I say I got to go back to the office, but I'll be back in 10 minutes. Let's face it, there's not a whole heck of a lot you can do with a Lego. But if you decide, let's say there are even more of you in here than are, maybe a couple of you got wheels or whatever, and you combine them together, you could make something together out of them. That's what we're going to end up doing later, is we're going to use these as building blocks to make bigger things when we go into arrays and array lists and things like that. But, so this is the variable declaration. This is the variable initialization. All right, so we are declaring a variable called first name. It's of type string, and its value is Jane. Now, if I asked you to read this, most of you would say string first name equal Jane. That's how I'd read it. But the way it is actually done is we're saying take Jane and assign it to the variable first name. That's literally what's happening in there. All right, so string variable, character variable. Then we get down to here. And you notice that employee number is an int. Since it's a number, we don't put it in double quotes. In fact, if I put it in double quotes right now, I'd get an error. All right, I can show you that, but I mean, you'd have to take my word for it or try it if you want on your own on yours. All right. Now, there's a lot of debate over people who work in computers whether or not that should be a numeric field. Because very many people are of the mindset that a numeric field should only be a field that you're going to potentially use for calculations. I mean, you're probably not going to walk into a bar and try to pick up a young person and say, hey, you want to know the square root of my employee number? You just don't do stuff like that. All right. So we could have made it a string. The advantage of making it an int like this is the system will check for us to make sure we put numbers in. But let's, some employee numbers may have letters in them. And if that's the case, we'd have to make it a string. I just did this so we had something in here. I could have used age or something else too. All right. Is union, bool is short for Boolean. All right. There was a mathematician back 150 years, 170 years ago, George Boole, who founded all this stuff. And it's a value that can be either true or false. And that's it. You oftentimes use the word, preface these variables with the word is. You don't have to do that. But is union, is married type of thing. And to the computer, again, there's no gray area. All right. Well, are you married? Well, sort of. No, you're married or you're not married. That's as far as the computer is concerned. So you are a member of a union or you are not. You'll notice that if I change this and instead of true, I put, for example, trues, I'm going to get an error because that's not an acceptable value to put in there. True and false are the only values that are acceptable in there. Oops. All right. Then we've got hours worked and hourly rate. I made them both doubles. I'm going to suggest that you very rarely, if ever, use a float in here. The two ways that you put in numbers that can have decimals are floats and doubles. Usually with a float, if you're initializing it, so if I just said float hours worked equal 40.0, it wants an F on the end, a lowercase f or an uppercase f. That's just too much work. Sorry. But if you want to do that, you can. It's not going to hurt anything. Okay? Also, just so you know, on these two right here, you don't have to put the 0.0 on the end. I could have just said double hours worked equal 40, double hourly rate equal 25. Program would work just fine. No problem. All right? But that's basically how it's stored, more how it's stored, so I just put it like that. And then you'll notice I'm actually doing a calculation here. Now, we're not worrying right now about overtime or anything like that. We'll bring that stuff in later once we get to that point. But we haven't talked about things like if statements yet, which we will at a later time. All right? So this should set the gross pay to 40 times 25. That should be 1,000. Now, that should make sense to everybody in here. All right? We could run it right now, but it's not going to do anything because we're not telling it to print. So we're going to do that right now. And right now, we're going to print each one of these individually. All right? Why? Because I want to show you a couple of things on this. And then we'll save it and we'll run it. And then we'll create another program. All right? So I'm going to come down here. I'm just going to move this all the way down. And you'll notice the first thing we'll print out is first name. And as soon as we print it out, that green squiggly is going to go away. All right? So I'm just going to come out down here. And again, since we have at the top using static system.console, all I have to put down here is a write line. So I'm going to put write line, and I'm going to put here in double quotes, first name, colon, space, plus first name. Just like that. Now again, notice how this does not have the squigglies anymore. See this? Now you don't have to do this yet. But I'm just going to come down here, and I'm going to put a read line in here. Oops. Right there. You don't have to do this yet. All right? But put in this line. Notice since I have the read line, if I save this and run it, that now it's going to come out and prints first name Jane. Okay? So what am I going to do? I mean, now it's up to you. But to try to make my life a little bit easier, I want to print out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 more things. All right? Since I'm a little bit lazy, I'm going to copy this. So I'm going to put it in there 8 times. Now, I'm not going to run this because if I ran it, it's going to have first name Jane, first name Jane, first name Jane 8 times. I don't want that. So I'm going to put in now. Oh, I guess I added the middle initial. So you don't have middle initial, you can add it. You don't have to. Again, you're not turning this in anyway. Whatever you'd rather do. Right. Oops. So that's that. You'll notice again, these first four now do not have the squigglies anymore. All right. You don't have to line stuff up like I've done it. I mean, if you want to do that, it's totally fine. And if you don't want to do that, it's totally fine. All right. And then finally, gross pay. All right. And again, you'll want to make sure that you put that read line at the bottom. Okay. Now, if you look up on the screen for a minute here, I'll bring the program right back. But I just want to show you that if I run this by clicking that green arrow by the word start, this is what I now get on my screen. All right. And what does it have? Basically everything that's in there that I just inputted. All right. So put all this in, and when you get done, click the green arrow by where it says start. It's always a good idea, always a good idea. There is an auto save on here, but anytime you're going to go and make a change, I always try to remember to click the double disk icon there. That way, if there would be anything, because in the worst case, if you put in some code that locks up the machine, you might have to reboot, all right, or quit the package or whatever, all right. So what we've just done is we've just written our first C# program. Again, the problem with this program in its current format is every time we run it, it's going to look exactly the same. Because again, we've come in here and we've hard coded in the values. There is nothing at all wrong with doing that. All right. I mean, if this was my company and I was the only employee, that would sort of make sense then. But most companies have more than one employee, and plus, it's kind of nice to be able to do this and be able to, put a little variety into it. All right. So what I'm going to do, first of all, did anybody not get it to work? Anybody have any problems with it? And please be honest. Because if you have a problem, it's totally fine. We'll figure out what it was. All right. To try to make this a little bit easier on myself, because we're going to rewrite this program in just a second, I'm going to grab these lines that are right here, just these, and I'm going to highlight them, and I'm going to do a Control-C to copy them to the clipboard. I can also right mouse click and choose copy, or I can do an edit copy. But I'm just going to grab those lines. You'll see why in just a minute. So I've asked, so I'm taking it for granted that all of you, A, got it to run, and B, understand what we just did. Is that a fair assumption? All right. So with all that stuff highlighted now, I can unhighlight it. It's fine. But notice I now have a solution called Payroll. And as you said, if we had checked that, this would be called Payroll01, and so would this. I was wrong. All right. It won't be the first time this semester, or it might be the first time. It won't be the last time. All right. So there's our solution. And here is our project. Well, this is what's open now. I can actually click this arrow right there, and I can, if I want to, I can close this. I don't need this one anymore. So it looks like this. But what I want to do is I want to create another project. So look on the screen, because if you do it in the wrong place, it's not going to work. I'm going to right mouse click where it says solution up here. I'm going to right mouse click where it says solution, and I'm going to choose add. And right at the top, it says new project. All right. So I'm going to choose that, and it's smart enough that it remembers what I used for a project last time. So again, I'm going to make sure that's highlighted, and I'm going to click Next. Now notice it's changed a little bit because we're already inside of a solution, so it's not asking you solution information. All right, we could change where it is. That would make no sense, but we could do that. Now, I don't want this to be console app. This one will be Payroll 2. So Payroll02. So please put that in. Again, you're not turning this in. This is meant to be a practice exercise. When we get done with this one, we're going to take a break. After the break, we're going to rewrite this again as a graphical user interface program. So by the end of the period today, ideally, not only will we be through chapters 1, 2, and 3, all right, but you will have 3 programs that you will have written. Now, as you're going through this stuff, first of all, let me create this. So 02, Payroll 02, and it's right under my payroll, so I'm going to click Create. And it should look pretty familiar to you because it looks a lot like the one we just did when we started. All right, but notice now it's only got using system in it. It was smart enough since we removed the ones before, so I'm going to add my using static system.console. I'm going to add that statement right there. All right, then I'm going to come down here. I don't need this right line, but what I do want to do is paste in that stuff I had before. Did I do that too fast? Everybody with me? Anybody not with me? So again, I added at the top this. I have no idea why Microsoft doesn't put that one in there by default, but they don't. All right. And it's funny because many years ago when I was working at the technical college in Wisconsin, I actually got a hold of somebody fairly high up in Microsoft support. They stayed on the phone with me until they realized that I was from some podunk technical college. And then they said, just a minute, I'll be right back. After 10 minutes, I was pretty sure they weren't coming back. All right. But the point is, again, it's something that we could use, that I think could be used. Okay. Now, so I've got that. Now in here, I'm going to change all of these. So my first name, I'm just going to set to double quote, and that is called the empty string, which means there's nothing in it. Everybody hear me? That's the empty string. Now look at this. You cannot set up an empty string for a character. It doesn't like that. It wants something to be in there. So just for now, we'll make this a blank space. All right, we'll take dough and we'll set that equal to the empty string. The employee number we'll set equal to 0. Is union will default that to false. Hours worked will make 0.0. Hourly rate will make 0.0. Whoops. Again, I hit the wrong key. And gross pay, we're also for now going to make 0. Okay? Now, if you look, I want to show you 2 quick things. Even if you're typing, just please stop for a second. First is, I've already mentioned this, but I want to show you there are 2 ways to create comments in here. The first is a single line comment, and comments are always in green using this editor. You can go in under the tools options. If you like different colors, you can change them to something different. I wouldn't do that, but if you want to do that, you can. It's your machine. So I'm going to put a single line comment in here with 2 forward slashes and hit tab and say, declare variables. Okay, just so you see that's a comment. Now, I'm going to make another comment, but I'm going to remove it right away, but I want to show you there's a way to make a multi-line comment. So a comment that would stretch over multiple lines. And that comment starts with a slash, forward slash, and a star. And as soon as you put that in and you hit enter, notice it starts giving you stars. And you can put as many of these as you want in there, and at the end, you end it with a star slash. So that's a multi-line comment. So I could write anything I wanted to in here. Why is that important? What you're going to see when we do the first assignment and we do it together, so you hopefully get a comfort level with this, is I'm going to take whatever the requirements are and I'm going to key them in. That's going to be my internal documentation. back many years ago, you know, if, 10, 20 years ago, I don't know, maybe longer, maybe not that long, probably longer. It used to be that when you got documentation for this stuff, you got a big book. All right. Now it's either A, that it comes on a CD or something like that, or even more than likely, B, they put it right in the software. All right. So let's assume for a second, I don't understand what the heck this string thing here is. I don't have a clue as to what that is. So I double clicked on it. See that? So I made it blue. Now I'm going to hit my F1 function key.